Welcome, friends, to episode 240 of Color Magic, your Magic Gaming podcast, where we talk about all types of things that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and still by my side for 240 episodes, got my main man, Brian Psionic. How's it going, dude?
Going well, getting ready for graduation. Apparently, I didn't know this because they didn't have this when I graduated 100 years ago. You got to have tickets to go to graduation now, like it's a concert.
Dude,
You know
I've
that?
heard of that. Like, I guess because some of these graduations got so big, because so many people are
Yeah,
inviting like 30 relatives, they're like, yo, you get five.
right.
like, and you can bring your closest relatives or get somebody else's tickets.
I,
That's
bel
what
I
you can do.
believe we get 8. So
Okay, cool. And now, does he go to a big school?
no, it's I mean it's a suburb, so it's not really a big school at all. But I guess they know how. They've done this for several years, so I guess they know how many tickets they need. And like you said, if everybody, let's say you got, I don't know, maybe there's 200 people in the class. I'm totally guessing, but yeah, if everybody were to invite 30 people, then yeah, you're
I
probably
don't know,
well over
man.
capacity.
I came from a small school, and I think my graduating class was like 150 or something. So I'm sure his is much bigger than mine was. But we also could just invite whoever the hell we wanted to because we weren't that
Right.
big. But yeah, if you want to support the show, you go to patreon.com/color of magic and you can get a shout out just like Benjamin Easter. And I want to say thank you for being a patron. And if you want to get a shout out on the show, support your business, get some people your way, give us a shout because we got room for some sponsors. But this week, there was an interesting article on, I believe it was defector.com was the website, that they interviewed Richard Garfield. And they led with the thing of creator of Magic knows exactly where it all went wrong. And then I had to read what felt like 8 pages of stuff to not get that answer. And I ain't gonna lie, man, I was a little bit mad when I was done. Because, I expect we're gonna get clickbaited on the internet sometimes. I get it. That's just how things work in this day and age. But I felt like, okay, I will say this for the article. It was at least decently written.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know anything about Richard Garfield,
And I think sadly we're at the point where, well, not even sadly, just we're old heads. We know. I'm gonna guess like a lot of people didn't know who the creator of Magic was. And to be clear, you can enjoy your whole Magic career and never need to know. But if you'd like to know, this is an interesting article for you to read.
yeah, and I will give it that. It did at least give you like the backstory, kind of where he's living now, his life since the pandemic, stuff like that. So like, okay, that was cool. But then when I got to it, it mostly felt like he likes nostalgia. Like he had a vision and Magic's just not that anymore. And that's what he doesn't like.
And
I'm
to
like,
be fair, I think isn't that kind of how many of us feels like we liked Magic better? For example, most people that play on the Pro Tour or whatever liked Pro Magic better 10 to 12 years ago.
yeah, some of them do, but it's also because they were the best players and it was easier to keep making money than it is now. Of course they're going to like it better.
But now they've told you, hey, don't try to make money doing this. This is for fun, essentially. So yeah, obviously the first one was better.
But my thing is, the stuff he liked is like, he still talks about things in the way he did his early concepts, where you would go and open a pack and you get a Shivan Dragon and it's super rare and you go to play in your play group and you probably don't own more than one or two because they're hard to get and it's super exciting when you draw it. But like, that's just not going to exist when you have millions, literally million, probably tens of millions at this point of people that play Magic all around the world. Like, he doesn't really like that there's a commodities and secondary market around Magic, which I understand.
And again, that's one of the things we've been covering on here is that it is getting more and more expensive to try to play this, almost to the point where it's this was dinner table talk last week. We talked about how expensive it was to try to play competitive Magic, or even if you'd like, I guess, to even go to your local Friday night Magic and have a chance to win 3 or 4 games with a couple of packs. That deck probably still costs what, $300-$400 probably.
I can tell you for sure I have a deck right now in Standard that costs about 150 and another one that costs under 100. Like, so you can build at all levels. Now, don't be wrong. There are like $700-$800 decks you can still build in Standard if you want to do that, like, for sure. those options definitely exist.
And if, let's say, even 50% of the people at Friday Night Magic are running the $700 or $800 decks, you with your $100 deck are probably going to have a more difficult time.
I don't
And
think
I
that's
don't even
necessarily true. I don't necessarily agree with that. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But seriously, I think it's a tough thing. And I relate it somewhat to we do to like AI, right? Like we don't necessarily like it. We don't like how it's being used, where it's going, but it's kind of inevitable. Like you can see some timelines where some things are just going to happen. Like there was always going to be a world where Magic, or I guess all the trading card games, so we can include Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and whatever in there, we're going to have some kind of secondary market, right? Like people are just going to want the cards that are good. People are going to want to build with the popular cards. Like no matter what you do, something was always going to fill in that role. Even before we had the big Pro Tour and everything else, people were still selling singles. That's how we got into the whole problem with Chronicles, because they were like, well, we should reprint a bunch of stuff and then things won't be as expensive. And then people got mad because all these cards they're told were going to be rare out of out of packs or whatever, ended up getting reprinted and tanked the market on a bunch of cards. And then they were like, well, okay, well, if we make everything super common, now everybody's mad about it, so we don't want to do that again. So then that kind of led to some of the stuff with the reserve list and all the stuff we have now around that whole situation. And that's, again, an even further separate conversation. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. What was your takeaway from it? Because
I thought it was
I'm
a
sure
really
we
good
saw it completely
article.
different.
I think I definitely think people should read it. Like, yeah, you could certainly argue about the length, but again, when you're obviously, I wouldn't have ever been allowed to write a piece this long in print, probably, but on the internet, you have as much space as you would like to have, provided you can keep people reading it. And I think probably you could have broken it into, like one part is a profile of Richard Garfield, and second part is, okay, here are the things that Richard Garfield thinks are wrong with Magic. You absolutely, I think, probably could have done it that way. If I were going to be asked to edit it, that's probably the way I would have had it go. But then they also probably have stats that say whether like people will read two pieces, and maybe their stats show that, hey, people don't come back for the second piece. So if we're gonna do this, put it all in the first thing. At least try to get them to read 6 pages. It's probably like YouTube. They probably won't finish the whole thing. They'll read till they feel what they've. Because obviously, if you already know, like if you're an old head like us, you already know a lot of the stuff about Richard Garfield. You're probably going to skim those parts. If you're somebody that has no idea who that is, that's all brand new information to you. You'll probably read those parts a lot more attentively than somebody that already knows all those things. But I think they also do a good job of pointing out, some of his nostalgia with, again, some of the problems that people are currently pointing to, like they mentioned, Bank of America's complaint that you're printing into, and not just Bank of America, but like a lot of players complain too, that you're printing entirely too much product. Even if you wanted to own everything, it's impossible unless you're independently wealthy. They're printing way too much stuff. And again, that seems to be a thing where the creator is in agreement. Bank of America is in agreement. A lot of players also agree they are printing entire, because I think Garfield envisioned a world where if you wanted to have a collection of all the Magic cards they made that year, it would obviously cost you a certain amount of money. It wouldn't be right now. It's almost impossible to do unless you are independently wealthy.
To some extent, but
to what extent is it not? Because how many?
Well, because there's still cheap versions of a lot of the cards. That's the thing. Like, if you want the super rare foil, prismatic, whatever, because we have all these different levels of cards now. Like, yeah, you can go get that for $80, $100 if you want. But a lot of those cards also have a $5 version.
Well, we're going to talk about it later in the show, but Secret Lair. If you want a Hatsune Miku Secret Lair right now, you're paying a scalper. You have no other choice.
But again, that's also just a rare version of a card that already exists. None of those are brand new cards. So you can go and get, again, for all those in that package, probably the most expensive one is probably 10 or 15 bucks if you want to just go get that card. But if you want that one with that art, well, yeah, now you're probably going to have to pay $30, $40 a card.
And I think I feel comfortable in saying I don't think Richard Garfield's vision of Magic included a world where if there was a specific Magic deck you wanted, you had to possibly take a day off of work and wait in a queue for 2 or 3 hours and possibly still not get the thing.
Sure. But again, It's a particular version of a card that exists. It's not a deck or anything that you need to play. Like, and we're in a world, and I get it why he doesn't
You
like it.
totally don't. I mean, they're pieces of cardboard, aren't them? You totally don't need
Well,
any of
sure,
them, but you
sure.
enjoy the hobby.
But I'm talking within the scope of having a game piece, right? Like we can get a cheap game piece and play with it, and we don't have to have the $30, $40, $50 version, right? But again, we kind of reach this point where I think as soon as the concept of collectible card games was made, with any level of rarities, this was going to be a thing. And I don't think, I mean, hell, again, we've talked about sports cards and other stuff before too. Like, kind of that same thing, right? It's the Honus Wagner thing. Like, technically, it was just a card, but because he didn't want his stuff available in tobacco packs, they basically destroyed the plate and then didn't print as many as the other one. So now people just want it because it's rare.
And
You know,
never in a million years would have foreseen his decision because he didn't like tobacco having that. What a guy, though, to be.
Yeah, he said, I don't want kids to have to buy tobacco to get my card, basically.
And for the time period, that is some extremely forward-thinking stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Most players just took not even the check, took the, I don't know, bag of gold doubloons or
whatever it was at the time. Yeah. Your vouchers for something, probably.
Right.
Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting. I'm with you as far as the editing on the article, though. I think it could have been just more concise in general, but definitely could have been like, hey, here's the backstory and setup on who he is. And then, give that a couple pages and then give the rest to, okay, and let's talk about the business side of things from his perspective. Because there was a lot, too, of just like, well, he gets invited to work on these projects, but he'd rather work on them by himself and then bring his stuff to the meetings because he doesn't work well with other people. And, all right, sure, I guess. Like, I guess if you want to know about process of this person of how he can do, I mean, I guess, but
yeah, and I mean, I think obviously, because you're dealing, you might as well say, I mean, he probably doesn't appreciate the term, but I think clear indication of you are dealing with a genius. I want to know what he reads, how he plays, what he does, how he thinks, all of those things, because the thing, literally, we have this podcast because of the thing he built
sure.
30 years
but I'll
ago.
also say this. I will admit to being at least a small bit jaded. I mean, I still admit the dude's smart as hell. I mean, being a college professor and all this other stuff, so I'm not taking that away. But there have been many projects in the industry that have touted like, oh, we've worked with Richard Garfield on this, or he was one of our designers on this. And it wasn't great. I mean, remember that game that came out on Steam that had like the 3 different screens because they were trying to do like a MOBA with a card game? Oh, what was that thing?
Artifact.
He was one of the lead designers, and they were touting that. And
but again, he didn't design the monetization scheme. The game was fine. It was the monetization.
I didn't even think the game was good. I think the presentation was going to be way too hard to follow for the average person to be interested in it.
That's how MOBAs are. MOBAs are too hard for MOBAs are the chess of video games. Not just
and you're making it worse by combining it with a card game. Like
it was always for a very it was for an elite clientele, and then they screwed up the monetization.
Yeah, I just knew from looking at it, I was like, yeah, this ain't going to be it. Even before we got to the launch and the monetization, like just watching people play it, I told people up front, like, this ain't it.
Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, sure. Anybody fortunate enough to get game design is to be in it for 30 years is going to probably have some misses. But the dude is like, I mean, it's comparative to like Dolly Parton apparently writing, I Will Always Love You and Jolene the same day. Many people are of the opinion that Magic the Gathering, the game that's the most popular game in our genre, is the second best thing Richard Garfield ever created. Netrunner is by many people considered to be his magnum opus, the best thing he or anybody else in collectible card gaming ever did.
There are some people, I won't say it's a lot of people, but some people, yes, I agree, do believe that. I mean, his first, the thing about Magic 2 is they kind of lucked into it because it was actually the second project he came up with, because the first was Robo Rally, but they didn't have the money to print board games. And they were like, board games going to be too expensive, too many parts, like we need something cheaper.
And to be clear, most people that work in game design will never create even one thing as good as either of those.
Oh, I agree. Totally agree. And I'm not taking anything away from him, because I mean the dude created a thing that I've made plenty of money off of.
Right?
Like, absolutely. And honestly, there's sometimes you just catch lightning in a bottle, right? You have the right idea at the right time and it's good. And it was a gap in the market, like, did everything right.
Yeah. Sir
You
Arthur
know?
Conan Doyle never created another Sherlock Holmes. There was
Also true. Yeah.
it was a one of one. Sometimes when you create the goat, a lot of times you peak early, and you just everything else you
Oh yeah,
do
dude. Hey,
will be compared to that thing.
we know it as sports fans. Sometimes you just have a good year, right? Everything goes right. Every shot's going in. They can't tackle you ever. Like, you have one of those crazy, a Sean Alexander, whatever, 26 touchdown
Yeah.
year, whatever that was, right? And then nothing's ever close after that. Like, you're like, oh, this guy's a world beater. It's just like, sometimes it just hits. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, but like I said, I think my issue was I was waiting for, like, I don't know. I guess the way it was sold, I was waiting for like this cool, at least, page of him breaking down something or whatever. And it's just like,
Yeah, I would probably have put more of his takes like on the game
yeah, I was just
itself
like,
together.
that was my thing. Like I said, I literally got to the end and I was just like, you talked about, don't get me wrong. Again, if you don't know about him, you're right. Like, there's some interesting stuff there. So like, it wasn't like it was poorly written. It just like, you sold me on this thing and then you didn't really deliver the thing.
I mean, I think it's in there, but it's like you really got to put it. Like they'll be like, one thing he says is wrong is up here. 2 pages later is another thing that he doesn't like. And again, if you had put all of that together, the pitch is, but that's that's an editing thing.
Yeah,
Whoever edited didn't put it together that way.
And I sort of feel for the writer a bit, because I mean, you're right. You're supposed to have editors to help with that. Like, that's the editor's job to help.
Also, the writer may not have picked the headline. The headline could have been.
That's sadly true too.
I know I have written stories, and then what would always happen at the Shreveport Times was I would get off at, let's say, 9 or 10 p.m. at night, go home, try to wind down to go to sleep. I would get a call from the editor putting the thing together right before midnight. Okay, I changed your headline to say XYZ. Are you okay with that? I'm wiping the crust on my eyes. I'm falling asleep watching Jimmy Fallon or whoever it was back then. Yeah, sure. And then you wake up, and I remember one time I had written just a story about, I think, a Boy Scout rally or something. And somebody had rewritten the first paragraph. It something along the lines of, young boys looking to do nice things are hoping to hook up with adults wanting to do the same thing. And they're like, what? That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, exactly.
My mama called me and was like, I know you didn't write that headline because your mind works like mine. You'd be like, no, this don't sound right at all.
Yeah, that's like tough. If you don't even get control over that, it kind of changes your narrative. That does suck.
So yeah, so we don't know the person that wrote the article picked the headline. Many times that is not the case.
Yeah, I think also the structure probably also hurt the article, because like, I did look around and there's some people who, they take excerpts and try to talk about somebody else's article, and some stuff's on Reddit or whatever. But everybody just kind of has like their own take on one or two things because it was so kind of loosely written, that I don't think anybody even took the same thing away from it. So it was just like, we're just talking about random stuff about Richard Garfield at that point. And it was like, yeah, there was an opportunity there, and I think it just got missed, unfortunately.
Plus, it's Richard Garfield's personality. He's not a hot take kind of guy. He ain't going to go in on anybody.
Well, he's not even what I would call an extrovert to begin with, for being a gamer and everything else. Yeah. Like, I remember seeing him at conventions for years. He's very reserved, even in person. So that's why I kind of was a little surprised even seeing the headline. And I'm like, oh, he must have like had a moment and like, I got to talk about something, right? And then it just was never there. And I was like, wow.
For him, this is probably a mic drop because he's an introvert.
Maybe. You're right. Maybe for him it is. I don't know. But all right, let's talk about some things that we learned this week, because there's a couple of interesting ones, and you have something really fun to share about one of your favorite games.
Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons and Dead by Daylight are both out here, making all kinds of crossovers and things and getting their brands everywhere. So I guess it was a matter of time before Dead by Daylight and D&D had a baby together. And here we are. Vecna, the villain from, well, both Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons, but this is going to be more of the Dungeons and Dragons influenced version of Vecna. Although, since they have the Stranger Things license, I'm betting at some point we get a skin that looks like Stranger Things Vecna, since again, that creature is called Vecna because he's inspired by the fact that the kids in Stranger Things play D&D. But yeah, he's we get Vecna as a villain with a lot of his Eye of Vecna and various artifacts that you can pick up to try to exert some control over him. And also, the survivor is I want to say an elf. I'm not gonna try to massacre their name, so I won't offend any of our elvish listeners. But and also, this is a cool thing. This is the first time that I'm aware of that they have had a survivor where you can play male or female. You can pick whichever gender you would like to play as this elven survivor. So that's a cool thing, and the community is already in love with this survivor in either gender. So that's a cool thing. Very excited, and as I said, they're out here just a few maybe a month or so ago. I said that at the time, what might have been a hot take that I think Dead by Daylight is the best licensed video game out there, and at this point, I don't even think it's a controversy. If you even kind of sort of like horror, this is the biggest shared universe in gaming. We got Ash, Dungeons and Dragons character, and somebody from Nightmare on Elm Street can all get together and fight Michael Myers or Vecna or whoever. It's just phenomenal universe building, and then apparently after finishing, they didn't finish dropping the mic, picked it back up in August. We're going to get a Castlevania Dead by Daylight set with I think they announced Dracula obviously is going to be the killer. I don't know which survivor we're getting. I would assume Simon Belmont or some member of the Belmont family, because that's usually who the hero is in Castlevania. But we'll find out more about that in August. I want to say I think the D&D chapter, I believe, drops in June. So yeah, very excited for all that. Dungeons and Dragons out there finding out new ways to get the brand in front of more people. Always a good thing.
This is kind of just keeps coming back to what we're saying, right? There's just a lot of ways to cross promote and cross brand products. And it's just, and we're going to keep seeing it because it's almost too easy to do, And if it's an easy way to grow your audience, like, why would companies not do it? Like,
and this is a case where it makes sense because it's already a horror / fantasy environment. So it makes perfect sense that Vecna would be in contact with Dead by Daylight's mysterious entity that likes to murder and torture people. So it fits in perfectly. This isn't a Magic doing Walking Dead situation. This is really a perfect thematic fit for Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, not just that, it probably opens up the door for a lot of other stuff, right? Now, could you get like Loth, the big like spider queen or whatever, as a monster or whatever, as the
Absolutely,
villain, right?
I would think so, because we already have the Xenomorph Queen, so you figure they've already got a lot of some of the same assets. I'm sure could be used. She kind of has that crawl around like a spider.
Exactly. So like that's the other thing I'm thinking about is like, what other like villains could you have from D&D? Because there might be 4 or 5 that they could shove in there.
Once they've thrown the door open.
Yeah, and honestly, seeing how popular the response is so far, it's like I can't imagine Wizards are going to say no if they come asking. I mean, assuming everybody can agree on the price,
right?
Might as well shove a couple more characters in there. Why not? And from what I understand, these are going to be permanent, right? They're not like limited or anything.
No, these are, I think, going to be on sale. And only time I think they've ever taken DLC down with Stranger Things, and that was a licensing issue, and it's back now. So I think they just had to again write somebody the right check. And
man, that game has had so many legs. I got to tell you, there's a much longer life than I thought it was going to have, but it's just trucking for real.
It and really is. Right. It came to define. It wasn't the first asymmetrical game, but they perfected it. They did it better than anybody else. And that was before, basically the game structure was already good. Then they figured out, hey, wait, we get every time a horror movie drops, you just sit there like, when's it coming to Dead by Daylight? When's it coming to Dead by Daylight? And usually the answer is it ends up being pretty soon. They've got, I think other than Jason, they've got almost everybody. And Jason is tied up in so much legal around. They can't even make Jason movies anymore till all that's settled. But
yeah, I heard something about that. Some of my horror friends were mentioning that. I had no idea what that discussion was, but apparently it's popular enough that it's horror fans are bothered by it, like
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Oh, the judge did a kind of like the wisdom of Solomon. Apparently, the people that I guess the people that are creating Jason's creators are fighting over who gets the rights to all this money. And I think that there are basically two sides, I guess, that had a legitimate claim, and one of them came up with the idea that Jason wears a hockey mask. So what the judge did was, okay, this side has the right to make a movie called Friday the 13th with a killer named Jason Voorhees, but this guy created the hockey mask, so he gets the right to the hockey mask. Basically, like, two of y'all work this out. That's basically what the judge said.
That is so weird.
Because one is essentially useless without the other. Because if you see Jason
basically.
without the hockey mask, you don't know that it's Jason. So the judge felt both of these things were equally important to the success of Friday the 13th. And the fact that nobody's gone off on their own to make a movie indicates that judge was probably right about that.
Yep. Man, that's crazy. But hey, I think you're right. Outside of probably Fortnite, Dead by Daylight's doing the most with the cross branding and all that other stuff. So credit to them, because they're going to make a lot of money off that. But all right, I want to share something positive from social media, because sometimes, we do talk about some negative things, but there's something really positive here. And on TikTok, of all things. But, the way the TikTok algorithm works, it just occasionally shows you a random thing. Just like, hey, maybe you'll like this thing or whatever. Well, I get this guy, and I don't know anything about this person at first. And he's just doing a video saying, hey, I did the math. I think he said like 2 million viewers to watch this video. Or it's like 2 point something, maybe 2.2, something like that. But anyway, 2 million viewers watch this video. It'll make enough money that I can pay off my student loans from college. And, that'd be a huge help, whatever. And he, as far as I could tell after looking after the fact, he was like a med student, and he's just been using TikTok to be like, hey, I learned this cool thing, or, weird stuff when something doesn't work or whatever. And just kind of talking about some medical stuff that he's learning or whatever, as far as I could tell. But it worked. He got a bunch of viewers to the point now he doesn't even know what to do. He's like, he made a thank you video, but he's like, well, now I have this 15 minutes of fame because everybody shared this video, and I'm just kind of here, right? Like, he's just kind of having fun with TikTok. He wasn't expecting a bunch of people to follow him and the video to get whatever. I think it's up to like 2.5 million.
Those are the best, where you have no idea that it's going to take off like that.
Yeah, he was just putting it out there into the world. And I guess talk about manifesting something. I mean, like, it happened. But what's cool is now it's become a thing where people are commenting and trying to make sure the algorithm brings them back to what they're calling pay off debt TikTok. So I saw another woman who was like, man, we had this major thing happen in her house, and like, she has to do this whole plumbing rework, and she just needs to get not near a couple million. I mean, she just needs a couple 100,000 views or whatever. But she's like, man, if I could get this, that'd be huge. And people are like, yeah, I got you. And they're like sharing her video and talking it up or whatever. And I'm just thinking, dude, this is what we should be using social media for. If we could help average people solve their problems by just like watching a 1-minute video, hell yeah, I'd put that into my routine every day. I'd put 15 minutes aside if I just watch 15 videos and help people improve their life. Great. Because I mean, hell, technically, celebrities have been doing this the whole damn time.
Oh, right.
Just getting paid. And getting paid way more than an average person would, because some of them are getting paid per TikTok or per Twitter post or whatever.
So celebrity or billionaires get the city to build them football stadiums.
That is true.
We've been doing this. Trump getting people, his voters, middle class and below, to pay his $1 million legal bills. What?
Hell, every politician gets citizens to fund their campaign.
Yep.
Here, even when we renew our car registration, it's like, would you like to send $5 to the whatever campaign fund, whatever side you're on or whatever, right?
And nobody checks to see if that money went to the right
place. Of course not. Nobody knows.
There's somebody somewhere probably working for the DMV misappropriating funds, and they in Tahiti somewhere. Ain't nobody.
Yeah. But I just thought this was cool, man. Like, I hope this becomes a real trend of just like, hey, this person's trying to get this problem taken care of. If all you got to do is watch a video for a minute, great. And then we all share it. 2 days later, this person's paid off whatever problem they got, right? Like, That's just a good world, man. It probably is a trend that won't last for very long. It'll be hot for like a month or two, and then it'll probably die down. But in the meantime, man, I hope people get paid off this. Now, don't be wrong. I think there will be some bad actors, right? Because people can just get some quick money, or they can get some social media feed press and, you know, build some clout and get some followers to help their future social media growth. So, like, that's fine. I'm willing to deal with that if it helps solve a lot of other people's problems, though.
Because I mean, we talked about this before the show. Like, if you're in the American middle class, you probably need the help.
Sure.
Unless you're already filthy rich, there's some bill hanging over your head that you could use help with.
And dude, and I love that it's almost scalable, right? Like you maybe have a 10K doctor bill or something. You can just be like, hey, I just need, I don't know, 500,000 views or whatever.
I was gonna say, if you've ever been to the doctor,
shoot, I went recently and I still got, I had insurance and still got hit with the bill. Like, so I feel it. I mean, fortunately I could pay for it, but still, I wasn't happy about it.
I could tell you stories, but I can't on
I feel
medical stuff.
I feel you. But yeah, man, I that's one that I'm really hoping we can get behind and really becomes a thing, because we see so many bad uses of social media, especially right now with, you know, politics and war and all this other stuff. It's like, man, it's cool to see a thing that not only somebody came up with a cool idea that everybody immediately backed, and now it's already becoming a trend. So it's like, hell, I mean, and we did that a couple years back. We had like the ice water challenge or whatever that was for ALS, I think it was. And, you know, like, that's cool. Like, that's what I want to see more of on social media. If we can just help people for not even having to do much, that's the best situation all around. Because the money's going to go to somebody anyway. Those views are going to go somewhere. So you might as well put that money in the pocket of people that need it.
Definitely.
And I ain't mad about it. But all right, let's talk about some topics. So, after we had went off the air last week, so bad timing, we found out that Cynthia Williams, the former CEO, or I guess president of Wizards of the Coast, well, we found out why she left. And this is why we
was one of the theories we espoused. One of them was that, hey, somebody backed a truck full of money up to her house and said, please, Cynthia Williams, come save us.
Yep. And we told people, like, this is why you don't speculate until we have at least some amount of context clues.
We didn't think it'd be this fast. We really didn't.
No, I thought, I'm with you. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer. But basically, her resignation went in. A week later, boom, here we are, right? Like,
so, since you mentioned the timeline, apparently they don't. Wizards doesn't have like a WWE 90-day, I guess it's technically not competition, but not even a 90-day, you can't be somebody else's CEO clause?
Nope. Not to my,
at least in gaming.
At least the director level down, I know that was not a thing on any of their contracts. Now, above that, I don't know. Apparently not, but it wasn't on the other positions.
But let you actually say what company she went to.
Yeah, so she went to Funko. The people that make like the bobbleheads or whatever. Like, kind of a little bit surprising because Funko's got its own problems going on right now.
Funko has been down bad recently. They have had to lay off entire divisions of people.
Recently being like almost 3 years down bad. Like they're not having a good time.
There are stories about them just having to throw pallets of Funkos into landfills.
Oh yeah, truckloads. Yeah.
Which, I mean, if we've seen this happen with collectibles once, we've seen it happen a million times. Funkos, Furbies, going back to tulips, if you know your world history. And then they wake up one day and...
to your point, they've had to sell off divisions, other game divisions they've had, and that's why when people come back to like Magic struggling, I was like, hey, look at all these other game things, though, and collectibles that are having some problems, right? Magic ain't doing too bad.
Like many of the games we've talked about, their gaming division actually has done some incredible work. They have a Funkoverse, basically kind of like a little miniature board skirmish game. You talk about shared universes. They're shared because it's Funkos. So
Yeah.
they make Funkos about everything. So you have a board game, you can play Captain America versus Sophia Petrillo from the Golden Girls. I'm not joking, because they make Funkos for
Oh, of
everything.
course.
And the game was incredibly well designed, and I have not seen a bad review of that game yet, but that whole division apparently got laid off.
Yep. But yeah, okay. So she goes over and you're right. I think backing up the truck is the best explanation because she's going to be their CEO. Actually already a CEO. They're just waiting for some paperwork to clear because she's supposedly also going to have a seat on the board. So you get to be in charge and you get to be on the board. Like,
right?
Why would she not have taken that? It's and
No
again,
reason to not take that.
This doesn't have to be about her hating anybody at Wizards. Doesn't have to be anything with her relationship with Hasbro. Like, that's just a step up. You can't do better than that.
Right.
Like,
and you're willing to, again, if you disagree with any decisions she made or anything that's happened to Wizards, hey, I just finished talking about some of the problems.
sure.
You're welcome to disagree. But the facts are her resume includes Microsoft, now the biggest freaking gaming company in the world, Wizards of the Coast, with the Magic being ridiculously.
Well, basically, 2 back-to-back record years while she's there, basically.
Yeah. So that resume gets you hired somewhere. Those are just the facts. You don't have to like her, but when you have those stats, and I'm talking about within a few years of her being at Microsoft, they are, again, a $3 trillion company. You're welcome to argue about whether you think she contributed to that or whether it happened in spite of her. Funko has decided they believe she had a little something to do with that, and they hope she literally saved this company.
But I mean, think about it. She probably went from making a couple million a year to probably making no less than $5 million, possibly more, and getting a seat on the board, which I'm sure comes with its own set of bonuses and extra pay or whatever. So, like, hell yeah, why wouldn't she take that gig?
You welcome to hate her, but everywhere she's worked, her resume shows stacks on stacks on stacks.
Yep.
And that's what companies and shareholders care about. They don't care if you don't like Secret Lair. They care, hey, did you put money in our pocket, Cynthia? And she's been doing that.
Yeah. And the only thing I would say is, like, you look, like we talked about, Funko's had its problems or whatever. And obviously, they're trying to bring in her expertise and connections. Possibly, like, whenever somebody like that gets hired, can you bring some other people in that you have relationships with or whatever, right? So,
Wizards
be part of it.
They're circling their wagons because the raid is probably.
Oh yeah, even from all her past jobs at Microsoft, whatever, there'll be some people that she's like, you know what, we're trying to, maybe they want to take some Funko branded stuff into some digital divisions or whatever, and like, we're going to need to build a team for that or whatever. I know some
of those folks,
right?
that for Microsoft and Wizards that have been laid off are going to get some phone calls.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, even if she can't turn it around, we already know she's got a pile of money, so who cares? Right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? She made good bank with bonuses and everything while she was at Wizards. So this is an all upside situation, right? If it doesn't work, she can just retire and whatever.
Like, can you save the Titanic? I'm not sure. Here's, I don't know, $10, $15 million. I'll try to save the Titanic.
Yep.
I'm gonna give it my best effort. Give me the shovel, the pail. We go.
I would be a little surprised if between her being CEO and on the board, and I'm sure that comes with some other level of investment or whatever.
Stock options.
Yeah, she's not going to be making less than $5 million a year. And it could be as much as $10 million a year, depending, because I don't know how solvent Funko is or whatever, but that's totally reasonable.
And if she can figure out how to turn that around, it doubles or triples.
Oh yeah, then she'll make piles of money. So yeah, but again, this comes back to the whole thing we said is no reason to speculate because it could literally be anything. People, because remember, people are like, oh, it's because their quarterly reports are going to be coming out in a week, and she's trying to get out of Dodge before. It's like, really though?
Reports came out and everything was largely fine.
Yeah, it was business as usual, right? So nobody cared. So like that wasn't the issue. And we didn't hear anything about her moving out of the area or whatever. So that wasn't a thing. And then this pops up and you go, there it is. Like that's the thing. So
We got to, just pat ourselves on the back because we have been kind of on fire with these with these theories, these predictions. Like we told you, we didn't think she got run off from Wizards. We felt like strong possibility that somebody bagged a truck full of. I wouldn't have bet Funko.
no, no,
I'll
no, no,
be
no.
perfectly honest.
No.
I didn't have I didn't have Funko in the tea leaves, but I figured somebody possibly looking at her resume had made her offer of some kind. Dead by Daylight, I think what again 2 or 3 months ago I told you Dead by Daylight was crushing it before they dropped D&D and
Mm-hmm.
Castlevania.
No, I'm with you. I think if you'd have given me a list of 20, 30 companies or whatever, Funko would have been toward the back end of that list.
Right.
It probably would have been, if you gave me 20, I probably would have had Funko at like 15 plus. It would have been on the back 4 or 5 probably. But hey, if they're taking care of her and she's happy, she didn't have to move out of the area, good on her, man.
I
Like,
told you
enjoy
about Fallout. I need a lottery ticket right now because Brian is hot.
it.
It's
Well,
facts.
speaking about buying some magic stuff, some people tried to buy some magic stuff yesterday, and it didn't really work out for folks.
I don't think we can't tell. We knew this is going to be hot. We
Yep.
don't. You get no credit for predicting the
No.
Hatsune Miku Secret Lair
No.
was going to be a banger.
Yeah, but Hatsune Miku had people. I saw so much stuff on people sharing their like wait queue times or whatever. I will say this: they at least got the system somewhat worked out because I didn't see anybody post a queue that was longer than like I think 50 minutes. And everybody said even at 50, it was going pretty quick when I saw it. Because some
Which
people
is
said
still, like
no,
we
no,
talked
no.
about earlier, it's
But
a
even some people
frightening.
said it was like, oh yeah, I got in. It was like 30 minutes, but they said it only took like 12 minutes. I think they were giving long estimates in case people were taking their time with checkout or whatever, but apparently they were getting through it. But those things sold out in a couple of hours.
And you started playing Magic well before I did, probably close to the beginning, I would say.
Yeah.
I started like around 2002, 2003, somewhere. Would either of us have envisioned a world in which a magic product goes on sale and you got to wait in line for an hour or even a digital line to purchase it? Could you have even seen anything
Not
like that?
really. Not in the beginning.
That's like lining up to buy the new, Madden numbers. It's just
Oh
back when we
yeah.
had to actually line up to buy video games many years
But
ago.
this comes back to the problem I had when they were moving away from print on demand. Was like, how much money are you leaving on the table? Right? Because there's a lot of people who are upset they weren't able to get it. And it's like, those are only ones that we can see. You know what I mean? Like, these are the people that decided to say something about it on like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Are there hundreds for each one of those? Like, could that be 10,000 orders? I don't know what the number is.
They have to have seen, because how many Secret Lair? We're
We're
several.
way in. Yeah, we're at hundreds of secret layers at this point.
So they got to at some point, I guess, have the numbers that feel, according to them, they don't feel like they're losing money.
I guess.
I don't know.
It's just hard for me to process. Like, especially
if they weren't, surely they would be doing it by now, right?
I would say this, especially in cases where you have to have a license fee that you're paying, right? I would think those are the ones you want to, for 2 reasons. You want to make the most money on it because those are also costing you more money. Like, it's one thing if you just paid artists to do artwork, fine. You just pay your flat fee to the artist, whatever. But you've usually paid some large amount of money for a license or a percentage fee. So, like, you want to make as much as possible, but there's also the double down factor of, especially in this case with Hatsune Miku, is that some number of people who aren't even regular Magic players that are just fans of that thing now want some of it, right? So like you would want to probably have as many available for everybody. But I don't know, this is what they just decided on. And it feels like it was handled as best as it could under the circumstances. But I don't know, man. Like this
Like
feels
you say,
like
if they're not going to print to demand, then I guess this is as good as it's going to get.
yeah, that's just unfortunate. Because like
somebody, I guess somewhere has decided that whatever bonus they get from all this
selling out.
publicity is, yeah.
I didn't even try because I knew for me it would have just been an investment play, right? Like I'm not a fan of the character. I barely know about other than seeing it. I had to educate myself on the character like a couple weeks ago. So I'd rather just be out of the way, let the fans who want one get one. So I didn't even try. Like For me, that just been something I would just toss in the closet and had some expensive collectibles down the road. But I feel bad for the people that really are fans of that thing, whether it's this or anything in the future. Same thing happened with some of the Fallout stuff.
Right.
Like whatever you're a fan of, it sucks if you can't get that thing just because we changed the model on how it's distributed. That's a bigger problem I have. Like I'm fine with it being rare and collectible, whatever. But if your goal is to cross promote something and cross brand something, then get the most you can out of it and please the most people, because that's the whole reason you're doing it. So the only thing I can figure is this is more about cleaning up logistics on their side as far as making sure what has time to be printed or not or whatever. And they can at least say, all right, we have this window. We're going to print X number of copies of the Hatsune Miku Secret Lair, whatever. And then we'll just have those ready to go. And if that's what they're doing and, that solves enough money issues or logistic issues that it's worth it, I get it. It's just, it's going to feel bad for some people that try to purchase it when they're fans. And that sucks. But more card stuff, because we had cards. Well, I guess this is kind of related because some people tried to get cards. Now you can't use cards. But more bannings came out this week. And the big news was basically that we tried this experiment with the last unset and said, all right, we're going to make certain ones available you can play with in tournaments or whatever. And then they thought it was going to be pretty much a non-issue. And then it turns out, no, there was this one card that was basically the sticker goblin that you could add stuff to it. And it became a whole mess. And they decided to make it where you just can't play the unsets in tournaments anymore and just call it good. And for those who don't know, sticker goblin was a little weird because even if you weren't playing the sticker goblin, people were starting to bring their own sticker deck. So you could try to mislead the opponent. So people were trying to get the stickers, even though they weren't playing sticker goblins. Your opponent, you know what I mean? Like it becomes this, and I don't blame them. It's a competition. You're doing what you can to get an edge. But then it just becomes this whole trying to next level other people for no good reason.
And then the coach holding his hand in front of his face so he can call the plays.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It just becomes a little bit of a mess. And people got tired of dealing with it and the card itself. And then it gets weird. Like, what if you steal the card with a card effect and now you got to have stickers to do things? And it's a whole thing. So they decided, you know what? You're right. We gave it a good run. We tried it. We're not going to do it anymore. And then there was some unrelated stuff that people got a little upset about it or whatever. And some people still want to try to play them in Commander or not. And that's fine. It's Commander. You and your group play them or you don't. That's fine. But this became a little bit of a weird situation because part of the conversation now became, well, then what do unsets have to offer? Answer is nothing. They never did. I mean, there's nothing. I don't know if y'all know this, maybe because you're newer players, but unsets outside of the special lands that are in each one, and sometimes the tokens or whatever, people never really cared about stuff in unsets. It's just never been a thing. It's hot. You draft it. You do the goofy things. The jokes are fun. After about a month, nobody cares about it. Kind of the same thing here. It's fun for a minute, but we got to see what happened when you start introducing those into a real tournament environment. It became a bit of a mess. So, yeah, we're not really feeling that. So, does it devalue a few things? Yeah, a few, but that happens with every banning, so it's not that big of a deal. And I think tournaments and people are going to be happy just in general, not having to deal with that hassle. But yeah, I don't know. That was one I didn't really bother me too much. I thought it was mostly fine. But yeah, man, I don't know. Have you played with any of the unsets at all?
I don't think I own a single one of those cards.
You're not,
like you said, it was a thing that everybody would. You dragged it for a month, and then a month later, nobody cares. So I just wasn't gonna spend any of my gaming budget on something that was going to be completely useless to me in 2 or 3 weeks.
See, I think that's the perspective a lot of people already have anyway, right? If even with this set, this last unset, you could use some of the cards because they marked them some differently than the other ones. But even then, only I think 3 of them even really made any tournament play at all. So it's not like it even changed anything. So it's why did we even bother with this? Just say we can't play with them.
Yeah.
Because to your point, most people weren't going to buy it knowing that, let's say in this case, 99% of the cards they buy, they're not going to be able to play with anyway. Like, except for chasing down the special shock lands and whatever, because those are sweet as hell, and the basics are really cool. But outside of that, eh. And if you really want them, you can just go buy them. Why waste the money on all the packs to get stuff you're not going to need, right? So yeah, I think that's the biggest issue with unsets, and it's a little tough because I believe Rosewater is very attached to the unsets. I think he likes the concept of just letting designers go crazy with some crazy ideas and wild stuff, which to his
Actually, the people
credit,
that enjoy it.
yeah, exactly. And his credit, I get it, especially if you're having to make stuff within a certain rule set and test all these things. Like, it's cool to have somebody just take the governors off and say, like, go for it. You know, right? Like, here's a crazy thing we want to do with dice. What can you come up with, right? We want to mix and match creatures. What can you come up with? And that's always fun. So I get it from a designer perspective. But at the end of the day, I think it's like a lot of things where what you may want to create, hell, we see it as creators, right? There's sometimes there's some things we want to do or make as a video or include in a podcast or whatever that people just aren't going to respond to, even though it would make our job more fun. Right? Like, it's just not a thing. They're not going to watch that video. They're not going to listen to that song or whatever. This is kind of the same thing. Like, it's cool if you make it. You just got to have low expectations for its usefulness because it's just not going to go that far. It's fun for an event. It's fun for like a special occasion. Do something goofy with it. But yeah, it's just not.
Why don't I think of that Mad TV commercial? The lowered expectations.
Yep, that's exactly it. That's exactly. Got to have lowered expectations because otherwise, I mean, because here's the thing: I have to imagine if you are attached to these types of projects, it does feel bad, right? That you're like, oh, this was so much fun and I really enjoyed this, and then you put it out in the world and everybody's like, yeah, cool story, bro. You know, like, I mean, that's basically it, right? Like, most of the people don't even give it a second look, and that's unfortunate. But like, you know that. I mean, hell, I know that even from having my shop, there were some things I was gonna put in the shop or make a certain look or put stuff on there that like I knew I was into was cool, but I knew that 90% of the people came in ain't gonna care, right? There's sometimes you know you're doing it for you. There's other times you know you're doing it for the customer. Unsets, I don't think we're really doing for the customer. This is more just a fun community thing to have, and it's out in the world, and you know you get to explore some designs. But you know, you kind of get to do that a little bit with Commander stuff, and then we just saw we had a card that was only in Commander that now gets to be in Modern Horizons 3. So sometimes stuff can cross over into that different space depending. But man, I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot of things this week. We talked about a lot of stuff.
I think I messaged you. Well, I think, like you said, the Cynthia Williams thing broke, and then Dead by Daylight. I mean, by Saturday, I felt like we had at least a good half of our topics already, because some weeks are those weeks where everything happens. And there are weeks where we get here right before we start out. What are we? You got any ideas? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, especially during the summer months, but this was not one of those weeks.
Yep. Well, hopefully we're about 2 months away from starting to hit convention season. So there'll be all kinds of stuff starts getting previewed soon. But all right, dude, why don't everybody can find you on social media?
All right. I am Brian Sonic on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And for those of you that are into the wrestling, the ECW pack just dropped for WWE. So I got a bunch of extreme barbed wire baseball bats set myself on fire videos. And of course, for fans of, you know, CM Punk, this is the first time he's been in WWE 2K20, or that was the first time in 2K24, but first time in a WWE game, and I believe over 10 years, because he was gone for a really long time, and he wasn't on good terms, so they couldn't even put him in the game. So a lot of people are super hyped, and I've used him. I've done a video about it. He actually is a lot of fun, as you would expect.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, if you want to find me out there, just look up PowrDragn, PowrDragn. Still doing a lot of cool stuff on YouTube, and honestly, I have a really fun project coming, so you may want to follow me. But as always, wherever you're watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome, and most importantly, be awesome to each other.